Hey, it's so great to have you guys tuned in this morning as we continue part 2 of Change Your World, which is more than a teaching series. It's this journey we're going on together as a church. It kicked off last week on Easter Sunday. And speaking of Easter Sunday, I just got to share with you some stuff that happened last week. First off, it was the very first time as Epic Life Church that we gathered together live, but the first time since March 8th of 2020 that we gathered together live for a service. I got to tell you, that was special. It was fun. Almost 100 people were here with us, and it was nice to actually talk to a live audience. That was a highlight for me, but it was great seeing the smiles and getting to hear people kind of connect and chat who hadn't seen each other for a while. I also was excited about the fact that almost 300 people tuned in on our services online as well. That's cool. And probably my favorite statistic from online is that 2 people made first-time decisions to follow Jesus in our online services. That thrills me. I celebrate that. I hope that you're hearing that for the first time. You celebrate that with me. That's exciting to me to know that we're having that kind of an impact. We're changing the world. At least for those 2 people, their world has been changed. But I'm looking forward to this journey as we go from today and then 6 more weeks after this to talk about how we as a church can begin this movement on this journey together to literally change our world. Now, I just want to brag on you for a moment. If you're someone who considers yourself a part of Epic Life Church financially, you've been generous with your finances. Thank you so much for doing that. You have had a direct impact on so many people's lives. We handed out a bunch of our Change Your World kits. You may have heard them. We got one right here, but you may have heard about that. A bunch of you grabbed them. Even this last week, a bunch of you grabbed them, and we're excited about that. If you haven't got yours yet, make sure you grab one because they are going really quickly. Sign up for one on the Connect form, and we'll get one of those to you. But I just want to say thank you guys who have been generous because you helped us to be able to provide things like these kits and to be able to invest in the lives of the people who made first-time decisions to follow Jesus on Sunday. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. You're helping us spread faith, hope, and love to our community and beyond, and I'm excited about what lies in store ahead. Now, we're going to jump into part 2 of Change Your World, which today we're calling it, We Can't Wait for Change. And I call it that because there's an urgency to it. It needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. There's no time to delay. I think even right now, in my mind, comes to my mind, my 2 children. I got a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old daughter. And I think about my daughters and the world that they're about ready to enter into as adults, and I want it to change. There's not enough time, it seems like, to make that change happen. We got to take care of it, and we got to do it right now. And so that's why we're calling today, We Can't Wait for Change. Jim Rohn, who is an author and also a self-help expert, said, without a sense of urgency, a desire loses its value. So we could have a desire to change the world. We could think it's a great idea, but if we don't have urgency about it, if we don't kind of have a little bit of anxiousness that we've got to do this and we've got to do it now, then that desire will lose its value, and we don't want that to happen. If you're following along in your notes today, you can open up the Notes tab, or you can take your printed notes if you got those printed off. I want to take you to a story from Jesus in the book of Matthew in the New Testament. It happens to be the first book in the New Testament of the Bible. And Jesus is he's actually sharing a message, which happens to be called, it's a famous one, called the Sermon on the Mount. And it's so extensive what's recorded in this message, it takes up 3 chapters of the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. And in the beginning of this Sermon on the Mount, this famous sermon, Jesus is addressing the people, the crowd of people that's gathered there, and he's sharing with them what I would call Jesus' Change Your World message. And here's what he says, if you're following along in the notes. Now, normally I would read from the New Living Translation, which is the version I like to read from most of the time, but I love what the Message paraphrase says. The message was written by a guy by the name of Eugene Peterson, and he paraphrases with very poetic language the same verses that we'd find in the New Living Translation. And I like what he says. If you follow along in your notes, in verse 13, he says this, "Let me tell you why you are here." This is Jesus speaking. And let me pause before we go any further. Have you ever wondered what the purpose of life is? Have you ever wondered how to bring your life significance? What are you supposed to do with these years you've been given? Listen closely, because Jesus says it right here. Let me tell you why you are here. He goes on to say, you're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. I love that language. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. Now, I'm going to pause right there because I've had with me a salt shaker. And if you know me well enough to know I have a very, how shall I say, a limited palette of foods that I like to eat. And not only is my palate limited, but I like vibrant flavors. I want vavoom. I don't want bland. I want things to like just pound, like Emerald. What's that guy? Emerald Lagasse. He was like, bam. I want my food to just bite me. And so salt is one of those wonderful gifts of God that allows me to add a little vavoom to the flavors of whatever I'm eating. This one's a little empty here, but what happens to this salt if it's just white powder and it doesn't have any flavor? It doesn't have any value. This salt, like, what would be the point of like going like this and shaking salt out on your meal if it has no flavor? It doesn't have any value. It's useless. We might as well throw it in the garbage. That's what Jesus says, that we are the salt of the earth. And if we've lost our flavor, the God flavors that we're supposed to bring out in life, what's our value? He says, here's what you're here for. You are here to be the salt of the earth. But if you're not going to be the salt of the earth, you're useless. You might as well be thrown in the trash. He goes on in verse 14 to say this. Here's another way to put it. So if you don't resonate with that whole salt analogy, here's another way. You're here to be a light, bringing out the God colors in the world. I love that language. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I put you here on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. Now listen to this. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. I have with me, too, a flashlight. And I think about being the light of the world. We've said this often, that in these recent times, it seems like the world's growing darker. And as the world grows darker, our light can shine brighter. And so that's what Jesus calls. He calls us the light of the world. I got this little light right here. I'm shining it at you right now. And we have the opportunity to be the light of the world. Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. In other words, we are here to change the world, to make it a better place with our saltiness, by giving it a flavor, God flavors in the world. And we are the light of the world. We're supposed to make the world brighter. I said to you last week that when we look around the world and we see all the problems out there, we have two choices. We can either curse the darkness or we can turn on the light. Jesus calls us to be that light, that we shine bright in a dark world, that we be the hope that people are looking for. In other words, we are to be a catalytic. We're supposed to be catalytic in helping people know who God is, introducing them to God. We are catalysts for change, but here's the problem that I see. Maybe you'll identify with me on this one. The problem is this, that on average, 8 out of 10 people are resistant to change. So our goal, we're here to be catalysts for change in people's lives, but we're up against a challenge because 8 out of 10 people don't like change. In fact, statistically, right now, you may be in the room watching with somebody who is resistant to change. Now, hold on a second. Don't look at them. If at the very least, maybe a subtle, like, you can look that way, but don't look at them or you'll give yourself away that you think they're one of those resistant people. Another reason why you might want not to look in their direction, because they might be looking at you because they're thinking the same thing about you. Are you resistant to change? Many of the times we are resistant to change. Why is that? Because change makes us uncomfortable. We don't like change because it makes us uncomfortable. I shared this with you a few weeks ago if you were tuning in, but I said, cross your arms like this. And I encourage you right now, do this again. If you know what I'm going to do, that's okay. Cross your arms like this. We all have a natural way to cross our arms. But if I ask you to turn and go the other way, if I can even think of how to do it, it's so unnatural. It doesn't feel right. I also said, you can put your hands like this, to clasp your hands together like this, and we all have a certain way of doing it. And in my instance, I put my left thumb on top, but now turn and go the other way. I put my right thumb on top. I don't know which way you do it, but man, that doesn't feel natural. It's like, I don't think I can even actually pray this way. There's something unnatural about it. It's hard to do things that we're not comfortable with doing, and therefore, we find the resistance that people have to change because we are designed, our brains are designed for safety and comfort. And so at all costs, we look for ways to make things simpler, easier, and safer. And so we have this big task in front of us because Jesus calls us to be the salt of the earth, the light of the world, that we're supposed to shine like a city on a hill. But in that process, 8 out of 10 people, by the odds, are going to resist the change as we try to be a catalyst for that change to happen. I'm going to share with you this morning as we talk about this rather large, lofty goal in front of us of changing our world. I want to share with you 3 steps that can help you to be a catalyst for change. And if you're following in your notes, here's the first one. Number 1, change your thinking. Number 1 is you need to change your thinking. Now, If you tuned in the month of March, this may sound familiar to you, but we just got out of a series for 4 weeks where we talked about changing our thinking. It was a series called Winning the War in Your Mind. If you didn't watch that, I encourage you to go back and review that, because very powerful stuff. In fact, we did that series to prepare our minds for what's next, which is change your world. And as we talk about this goal of reaching out and trying to actually change our world, I want you to understand that if you don't start with your thinking, you don't change your own thinking, the possibility of you being able to change the world diminishes greatly. In fact, your behaviors can change for a moment, for a little while, but if you don't actually change your thinking up here, they will always default back to where your thinking is at. And so if you want to learn more about that, go back and watch that series. But I want to point out to you that we have to change our thinking in order to change our life. We have to change our life in order to change the world. Here's the problem that I believe are 2 obstacles that we have in front of us when it comes to changing the world. Number one, as I think about this, the scope seems so impossible. I've been talking about this, that even for me as a pastor, I feel called by God that we as a church are supposed to begin this movement to change our world. But I got to be honest, it sometimes seems impossible when you think about how large and lofty that goal is. There's over 7 billion people on the planet, and who am I to think that a small group of people who are headquartered out in Hillsboro, Oregon, in the northwest, the corner of the armpit of the nation, that somehow we're going to make a difference and change the world. And so I have to always be fighting in my mind against this urge to think that it's impossible. Because here's the thing. If you think you can't change your world, your assumptions are putting you in a box. They will put you in a box. Now, if you're looking at the Notes tab, you won't see this. But if you've got a printed notes, or if you're looking at the PDF, you'll notice that in your notes, there is a grid of 9 dots, 3 rows of 3 dots. And so I'm going to ask you to look at those right now. You may have seen this done before. If so, keep quiet for the people around you. If you've never seen this done before, after we're done today, this will be a fun little game to play with people who don't know this. You'll look really smart to them. But when we look at these dots here, these 9 dots, they kind of form an imaginary box. And if I were to tell you to take your pen, and I want you to draw a straight line, and you want to draw 4 straight lines, but you can't lift your pen. You can only just change direction and draw 4 straight lines and make sure that you've intersected all 9 of those dots. Can you do it? And if you've done this before, you know that it's super challenging. In fact, if you're a problem solver and you try this many times, you'll find out that it actually is impossible unless you remove your assumption. The assumption is we place an imaginary box in the shape of these three rows of 3 dots, this grid of 9. And what would happen if we got outside of that imaginary box that we place ourselves in is this. I'll show you this on the screen. There's a solution. You start in the upper right-hand corner, and you go all the way down to the bottom left-hand corner. You turn your direction, go straight up, go outside of the imaginary box, until you can draw a diagonal line that goes down at a 45-degree angle all the way down to the bottom right-hand side, and then you can finish it up by drawing over to the left, back to that original bottom left corner. And there you go, voila. You have 4 straight lines to complete a box. You may be thinking, well, Mike, that's unfair because you didn't tell me I could go outside of that box. But isn't it true in life that we often place an imaginary box that restricts us from doing what we could actually accomplish? Let me blow your mind a little further. I've seen this before, this illustration, and I want to show you. You can actually do it in less than 4 lines. Here's an option right here. Here's the assumption. The assumption is that we have to intersect the center of every dot, but you'll see that if you just touch every dot, you can do it with zigzag lines in 3 straight lines. How about this one here? This one here allows us, if we take the assumption away that we have a fine tip pen and we go to a chiseled wide angle felt tip marker and it's wide enough, we can take 1 straight line and swipe it through all 9 of those dots in 1 line. How about this assumption here? The assumption that we can't fold the page. But if we were to crease the page in such a way that all 3 of those rows lined up on top of each other, 1 line going straight through would intersect all those 9 dots. How about this assumption? We can't circle the paper, curl it up into a circle. But if we were to take the paper and circle it up, we can actually draw, as you see in the illustration, we can draw a spiral straight line that goes around and around and around until it's gone through all 3 of those rows. 1 line. But my favorite one is this one. Assumption. We can't tear the page into pieces. But if we were to tear each one of these 9 dots up separately and line them up right on top of each other, we could put 1 dot by piercing right through all 9 of those sheets, put 1 dot to intersect all of those dots in 1 shot. See, we place assumptions on our life, and I think our minds are so finite in our thinking that God sets in front of us a lofty goal, and we're like, God, I can't do that. It's impossible. But God's saying, you're thinking in human terms. You've got these assumptions in place that are boxing you in. But what if you were to open up your thinking and allow me to expand your mind as I lead you through this path of changing the world, and watch what I can do through you? In your notes, you'll see Colossians 3:2. The author Paul writes this to the church in ancient Colossae. He says, think about the things of heaven, not the things of earth. And many times we find ourselves stuck in our own finite thinking all about what we know is possible because we've accomplished so much, we know everything. And then God's up in heaven saying, guys, stop putting your mind and your thoughts on the things of earth and put your mind on the thoughts and things of heaven, because I have no limits. And I can do things above what your wildest imagination could even dream of. That's what God wants to do through us. You can transform yourself and the world around you, but for that to happen, you need to change your own world first. That's where it starts. And that leads me into the second obstacle that you're facing, and that is the obstacle of myself. We are our own worst enemy. And I alluded to the fact earlier that 8 out of 10 people are resistant to change. You probably are resistant to change, at least in some areas of your life, maybe in this one right here. And we have to get out of our own way in order for God to be able to work through us. We have to allow God, in other words, to change us. Mahatma Gandhi said, for things to change, first, I must change. I love the way Pastor Tony Evans puts it. He says, if you want a better world composed of better nations, inhabited by better states, filled with better counties, made up of better cities, comprised of better neighborhoods, illuminated by better churches, populated by better families, then you have to start by becoming a better person. See, change starts with me. How in the world do I expect to change the world if I don't even start with changing myself first? Changing your world begins with changing you, because you cannot give what you do not have. Let me say that again. Changing your world begins with you, because you cannot give what you don't have. And I want you to remember this, that when it comes to change in your own life, be patient with the process, because change doesn't happen in a day. Change happens daily. Baby steps. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think a lot of times we just feel like we just got to shove it all in our mouth at one time, and we're like, I can't get it to fit. Why won't it fit? We just need to back up. Be patient with the process. God changes us one little baby step at a time. Look in your notes, the verses there, Matthew 5:13 and 14. This is the New Living Translation. Jesus saying, you are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the world. And when it comes to changing your thinking, you need to be able to see yourself as salt and light. That's who Jesus called us to be. If you're going to think about things of heaven and not things of earth, you need to see yourself as salt and light. That's the commandment. That is the mission, the purpose of our lives, is for us to be salt and light, to make the world better and to make the world brighter with our own lives. We all need to be changed before we can be a vision carrier. I think of COVID-19, there are certain ways for that virus to spread. Being in proximity with someone who has COVID, with a mask off and closer than 6 feet and in a tight quarters for a long period of time. Those are all excellent ways for that virus to be transmitted. But in our own spiritual life, in order for us to be a vision carrier and to be able to be someone who spreads that vision to other people, we have to get into their lives. We have to get into their proximity, and they have to see God's light shining in our life. They have to see God's salt bringing to life their life. The things that were dull in their life become bright now because they see things from God's perspective. That's what we're called to. Here's the second step to being a catalyst for change, and that's this. Number 2, we need to harness your hope. Harness your hope. There's 3 ingredients necessary for hope to take root. Now, I shared this last week, and I realized after I shared it that I was so excited that I left out one of the ingredients. So if you missed that last week, you're like, ugh, I wish I'd heard that last one. I need that last one. Take heart. We're going to talk about it now. There's 3 ingredients for hope to take root. And the number 1 is this. We need to have a goal. And I believe we have a very worthy goal. Jesus called us. He said while we're here, we're to be salt and light. And I believe what the mission God has given us is to change our world. And the way we're going to do that is through next generation transformation. That we're going to look at the generation coming behind us. We're going to invest in them. We're going to equip them for success so that they can lead cultural transformation as fully devoted followers of Jesus. That's a worthy goal. So we have that in place. Second thing is willpower. Willpower is where hope needs to take root in your life, because for us to change our world, I just got to tell you, it's going to take a lot. It's going to require you to dig in. It's going to require you to be disciplined, to be committed, to stay the course, because it's not going to always be an easy journey. In fact, most of the time it will not be an easy journey, because anything worthwhile in life is an uphill. We have to go uphill for it to be a worthwhile cause. This is a very worthy cause to change our world, but it's going to require us to have some blood, sweat, and tears invested into this. Here's the third ingredient that I failed to share last week, and that is way power. Way power, really what I'm talking about is the power to know the way to go. It's one thing to know, yeah, let's change the world. It's another thing to understand, how do we do that? Now, I shared with you very openly from the beginning when I felt like God was calling us to this idea of changing our world and next generation transformation, that I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the steps figured out, but I do know the starting place. The starting place is change your world. And for these 8 weeks, the way power is going to become visible to us as each week we unpack one more thing that's part of the blueprint that helps us to know how we as a community come together, rally together, and change our world together. So tune in each week, because each week builds on each other. Each week is a stepping stone in this process of changing our world. So those 3 things are the ingredients we need for hope to take root: a goal, willpower, and way power. I like what journalist Linda Ellerby said. She said, "What I like most about change is that it can be a synonym for hope." I like that. Change is a synonym for hope. If you are taking a risk, what you are really saying is, I believe in tomorrow, and I will be part of it. It's this proactive thing where you step in and say, I want to be part of the process to change the world, the hope I want to bring. And I almost, she says hope is synonymous with change. I think in a lot of ways, hope is synonymous with courage too, because it requires a lot of courage. And when I say harness your hope, in a lot of ways, I'm also saying harness your courage. Now, I said these messages build on each other. If you didn't listen to last week, go back and listen to that one, because we talked about hope gives us the courage to change our world. Hope fills us with the courage we need to be able to proceed in doing what God has called us to, even when it seems impossible, insurmountable, like it's just too much. We have the courage because God gives it through His hope. Now, in order for us to harness our hope and take courage, it'll help us to be able to shape tomorrow, to make it a better place. And I want to give you a fact that you need to understand today. This is true of all of us. Everything that we want and everything that we need, we do not possess. We do not have. I know this because if you had it, it would be inside your comfort zone. But everything that we want and everything that we don't possess is outside of our comfort zone. And in order for us to get to the things that we need, the things that we want to be able to help us succeed in this journey to change your world, we're going to have to step out of that comfort zone in order for that to take place. We love going on certain paths. We have certain things that are safe, certain things that are fun, certain things that are easy or comfortable. And we stay in our comfort zone and we roam around in that area. And all this that we have in that area, we've already got because it's in our comfort zone. But if we want to get to the things that are necessary to change our world, we're going to have to step out. We're going to have to take a risk. I love the way that Jack Canfield puts it. He says, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Everything that you want is on the other side of fear. You're going to have to get uncomfortable. You're going to have to be bold. You're going to have to knowingly step into things that are fearful in your life. That's the only way for us to grow. That's the only way for us to move forward. It's one step at a time. Think of a young baby or toddler as they learn to walk. Can you imagine if they stood for the first time and took a couple steps and fell down and hurt themselves? They never tried walking again because it was just too scary. We have to step out of our comfort zone. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we acquire the skills, the experience that we need to be able to take on this journey to be able to change the world. Look what the author of Hebrews says in Hebrews 10, verses 23 and 24. He says, let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm. I kind of sense this resolve, this urgency. We need to hold tightly to the hope that we have. And then he goes on to say, for God can be trusted to keep His promises. And then it's like, I'm holding tightly, and then I can kind of relax and have peace because I know in my life that every time God has promised me something, it's always come to fruition. He's never failed me yet. So I know that if I hold on to this hope, even though I have to hold strongly and tightly to that hope because there's challenges ahead, there's risk involved, there's things I'm going to have to step into that are going to be fearful, But I know I can do it because every time God's promises succeed in my life, they come true in my life. He goes on in verse 24 to say, let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. So I want to remind you, if we're going to change our world, it doesn't happen in isolation. We don't become islands to ourselves and change the world. It happens in community. And the author of Hebrews says we need to think of ways, look for ways to challenge, to encourage each other so that we go in the direction of acts of love and good works. I want to tell you, when I think about changing our world, I've done a lot of daydreaming lately, thinking about what it would look like if we even partially succeeded, but even if we succeeded in accomplishing change, that we would see in this next generation rise up significant change where people embrace positive values and people embrace God-based values, and they were able to step into sectors of influence in our culture and literally change our world. I've dreamed about that. But here's the thing I want to share with you. Dreams are free. Dream all you want. And please don't stop dreaming. But the journey isn't free. Anything worthwhile in life, as I already said, is uphill. And you think, have you ever ridden a bike up a hill? I used to ride my bike a lot. I don't ride as much as I probably should anymore to stay in shape. But I remember one time I rode to the beach at Seaside, and that last hill I remember was like this 4-mile hill that you climb. And man, it was so hard to get up the hill. It took me, I think, like 45 minutes to an hour just to get up the hill. And like I had it in the easiest gear, and as my feet are going like this, I think I'm moving at like a walking pace. I was hardly moving at all, and it feels like so much effort, and I got so sweaty, and then I ran out of energy and oomph, and I had to like take a granola bar out of my snack pack and eat that because I just was running out of energy. And I got to the top of that hill, and wouldn't you know, going down that equal 4 miles on the backside took about 5 minutes. It's so easy to go downhill. Like I was like, my hair in the wind, and I got like water like rolling out of my eyes as I'm going like 35, 40 miles an hour down in the hardest gear, pumping as hard as I can down this hill. Cars are barely passing me, and it's so much fun to go down a hill. But it's really hard to go up a hill. It takes a lot of effort, and sometimes you look back and you're just discouraged at how much progress you've made. But everything worthwhile in life, it's an uphill battle. So dream a lot. But realize the journey is going to cost you something, and be ready for that to cost you. Harness your hope. Remember the hope that we have, like we talked about last week, the hope that Jesus rose from the dead on that third day, Resurrection Day, Easter Sunday, we celebrate every year. He rose from the dead so that we know we have hope in Him, hope in our relationship with Him, and hope that He's going to see us through to the end of what He's called us to do. Harness that hope as you go on the journey. Here's the third step to being a catalyst for change, and that is take your first step. You got to take your first step. You've heard this before, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I think of the movie Wizard of Oz, and I think it's like Glinda, the Good Witch of the North. I haven't seen that movie forever, but if I'm quoting this right, Dorothy asks her, where do I start? The Yellow Brick Road, it starts in this little spiral. And she says, I've always found it's best to start at the beginning. And I think in a way, we just need to realize it's not as complicated as we think it is. We just need to take our first step. And sometimes the first step isn't always the best step, and we take a misstep, and we got to stop, readjust, and take a different step. But here's the thing. If we don't start taking a step in the first place, we don't go anywhere. You have to take a step to be able to move forward. Look what Matthew 5:16 says, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. He doesn't say let your good prayers shine out for all to see. Don't let your good intentions shine out for all to see. Let your good words shine out for all to see. No, he says, let your good deeds shine out for all to see. We have to take action for people to see God in our lives. That's how people see Him working through us. That's how they get a glimpse of who God is, by us taking action. You'll find that this is actually our memory verse for today is Matthew 5:16. And in fact, I want to go back to our kits. If you were with us last week, we opened up our kits, and I just want to go to our kit. If you don't have yours open and point out to you, I don't even have my memory verse cards with me, but there's a memory verse pad that you have in your kit, and you can pull that out right now. And if you don't have it on your fridge already, put it there. We give you a little magnet on there. We actually ours fell off the fridge, so we actually had to tape our magnet back on. You can use glue stick or something like that. Be creative with it, but get that on your fridge. And we're encouraging you as a family that you learn these verses together, that everyone in your family, from preschooler all the way on up, that you work together to memorize Scripture, because that, my friends, is how we grow and how we begin to change our thinking, so that we're thinking of heavenly things, not of earthly things, and allow God to lead us on this journey. But Matthew 5:16 is this week's verse to remember, to remind us that our first step is to step out and do good deeds so that we can shine God's light. I want to also talk to you about another idea for taking your next best step, and that would be to join a transformation group. Let me just stop right now and be real with you. I know a number of you guys are in groups, but I also happen to know there's a bunch of you who are not in a transformation group. And I need to ask the question, why? Why haven't you stepped out? See, if we're going on this journey together and you're like, yeah, Mike, I'm excited about Change Your World. Let's move it. Yeah, let's do this thing. But you're just a little too scared. It's a little outside of your comfort zone to join a transformation group. How in the world do you think you're going to take the next step, which will be even more difficult or more challenging or require more courage? If you haven't signed up, sign up today. You can do that on the connection form, or you can also just click the link at the top of this page and you can see all of the groups that are available that you can join. And it's really easy. It's not intimidating. Some of them are meeting live down here at the church. Some of them are meeting online. But join a group that fits your time and day of the week that works for you, and also your comfort as whether or not you want to be live or if online works better for you. But we encourage you to join a transformation group. Let me go a step further. This one gets a little more challenging. Some of you guys have the ability to start a transformation group. We've asked for facilitators, people who are willing to step up and say, I will facilitate a group, and then I will recruit people in my life to join that group with me. I want to encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, but you have the ability to sign up to start a transformation group. All it requires is that you think about the people in your life. Is it a coworker, or is it your family friends? Is it your neighbor? Is it the people in your own household that you can join together? If you have just 3 people, you can have a successful transformation group. In fact, we encourage you, don't let them get over 10. That's probably too many for one of these groups. But here's the thing. I'm not asking you to start a group that we can fill for you. I'm asking you to start a group and then say, I will fill my group. If you can do that, just gather together a few people in your life, people that you have things in common with, people that you care about, people that are in your sphere of influence, the people that are around you that you're connected most to, and invite them to join the group. They start this week. Now would be a great time to take a step forward in being part of this movement to change the world. What are your next steps? Maybe you're not quite ready to take that one to start a group, but there is a next step or multiple next steps you can take. In fact, in your notes, I put some lines in there for you to fill out some of your ideas for next steps that you can take forward. Just take that next step forward so we can change the world together. Here's some ideas. Join a group or start a group. We already talked about those. Maybe it's to memorize Matthew 5:16. Maybe you're going to take that to heart and really work hard to memorize that this week. Maybe we're going to take it a little step higher, inviting a friend to join online. Who do you know that you could invite to join us on epiclive.online.church for next Sunday's services? They could join in, to join and be a part of the community, to experience the Change Your World movement that we're beginning together, and to be able to jump in and be a part of that Change Your World movement. Maybe for some of them, it's the first time that they've ever been exposed to the love of God and understand who God is and the hope that He brings to their life. And maybe you're changing their world because they accept Him, like the 2 that accepted Christ last week into their life, that they could accept Him into their life next week. How cool would that be? Maybe it's to invite someone to join your transformation group. Maybe you're not going to start one, but you've already joined one, and you invite a friend or family member to join you in the group that you're a part of. Maybe your step this week is you're not really consistent in spending time with God through reading Scripture and praying, and you're going to make a concerted effort this week to dive in daily, just 5, maybe 10 minutes to be able to spend time in Scripture and prayer so you can get your mind saturated with the things of God to take you on the right path where you're going. Maybe it's this book that we have included in here, which, by the way, is just a tool. It's another way to help us on this journey to aid in understanding how to be a part of this movement to change your world. There's 9 chapters in this book, and maybe, I didn't mention this last week, but if you do 1 chapter a week starting last week, so this would be chapter 2 this week, just read a chapter of this book a week. By 1 week after the end of this series, you'll have completed this book, and it is one more tool, one more thing that'll help you on this journey to help you understand how you can be a part of changing your world, to be a part of this movement. There's ideas. You've got to figure out for you what the best next step is, but I encourage you to take a step because we don't move forward without taking a first step. Here's the thing. If we don't resolve immediately that I will take action to change my world, what we're essentially saying unconsciously is that I will not change my world because someday and tomorrow eventually become never. I don't want that to happen for you. I don't want that to happen for me. That's why when we started out today, we talked about there's an urgency here. We need to take action, and we need to take action immediately. This isn't a step that you take next week or someday. This is a step that you take today or at the latest tomorrow, that you're ready to immediately to jump into action. See, the longer we wait to take steps, the more the excuses build up in our mind and the less likely we are to actually follow through with doing what we actually want to do. We have good intentions, but we don't actually have good actions. As we go on this journey, I think it can feel overwhelming when you think about this daunting task of trying to step out and change your world. But I want to share with you an encouraging story that I heard many years ago, and I hope it'll encourage you. Maybe you've even heard it before. It's called The Starfish Story by Lauren Eiley in her book, The Unexpected Gift. The gist of the story is that a man walks along the beach one morning after a storm, has washed thousands of starfish ashore. As the man walks, he sees a boy at a distance stooping down and doing something. When he gets closer, the man realizes that the boy is picking up the starfish, one by one, and throwing them back into the sea. Surprised by the boy's action, the man says to him, "There are thousands of starfish stranded as far as the eye can see. What possible difference can it make that you're throwing all these starfish back?" The boy is ignoring him, and he just keeps throwing them in, throwing them again. The man's persistent. So finally, the boy holds up a starfish he just picked up. He looks at it for a moment, and then he tosses it into the sea and replies, "Made a difference for this one." I think sometimes when we think about the overwhelming, daunting task of changing our world, we forget that it starts with one person. Maybe it's your spouse. Maybe it's your son or daughter. Maybe it is a neighbor or a longtime family friend. We all have people in our life that we care about who do not currently experience the hope of Jesus in their life. But if we step forward and we take action, maybe our role right now is just to change their world, that one person. You know, each week we talked about our Change Your World kits and how we're going to unveil something in each one of these boxes. So I want to encourage you to open up your kit, and inside are these 8 individual boxes. And one of those boxes, hopefully it's the front row on the left-hand side, is marked April 11th. I want you to pull that box out. It's got a white sticker on top of it. And if you will, with me, open up this box. Inside of this box is a visual reminder of the fact that it's our job to change the world for somebody else. And what I want you to do with this starfish, I don't want you to put this starfish in your junk drawer in your kitchen and think, well, that wasn't a nice trinket. I want you to actually put this in a prominent place. Maybe you're inspired by the memory verse card pads with the magnet, and you glue a magnet to the back of this and put it on your refrigerator. Maybe you tape it to the mirror in your bathroom. Maybe you tie a string to it and dangle it from the mirror in your car, your rearview mirror in your car. Maybe if you're a crafty person, you create a shadow box and you put it in a frame and you frame the story of the starfish, which you can find online very easily to remind you of the power of that one person in your life that you have an opportunity to make a difference in their life, to change their world. I would love it if you actually would email me. If you have a picture or want to write to me and tell me what you did creatively to put this in a prominent place in your home or in your life, that you would write me, mike@epiclifechurch.com, and send me pictures, send me your stories about what you did, because I might share them with others to get ideas about what they can do. But let this be a reminder. Hopefully, this is something that sticks with you and reminds you that it's not about changing the entire world. It's just about changing the world for one person. And isn't that something that we can do? Isn't that something that's hopeful in our life that we can actually take action on? There is a song that I heard, I don't know, about a decade ago that really made a super impact on my life. And it's interesting, just about a month ago, I stumbled across this song again. It brought me to tears. Because I remembered the power this song had in my life, this idea that we're a part of this movement and something that is welling up inside us, God wants to do in us. And in a way, you've probably even seen this in me in the last couple months, that it gets my blood pressure going. And it gets me very excited, and I get very adamant that we will change the world because I believe in my heart of hearts that God has called us to this. And when I hear this song, it brings up this emotion inside of me that wells up that says, I am not going to back down. I'm going to do exactly what God has called me to. I don't care if anyone else goes with me. I will follow the way that God has called me to, and I'm not turning back. There is no going back. This is where I'm headed. I've asked the band if they would play this song with me so that you guys can hear it. So they're going to join me up on the stage right now.
Creation waits, bated breath in pain, for redemption's day. And all creation cries, floods in charcoal skies, things are not alright. Brokenness and broken fists we beat upon the breast of fallenness. We hear the call of kingdom come as one more train we chase to only miss. But we will never give up on it. We're part of the resistance. We're running in a revolution. We're part of the insistence that we are more than institution. We're part of the tradition, the spirit-powered evolution. We're part of the resistance. We're running in a revolution, All creation groans in one voice alone, for them to be shown. And all creation cries, floods in charcoal skies, things are not alright. We're living in a world built on the walls between the haves and never wills. But we're following a king whose ears are bent to those forgotten and unfilled. And he will never give up on it. We're part of the resistance. We're running in a revolution. We're part of the insistence that we are more than institution. We're part of the tradition, the spirit-powered evolution. We're part of the resistance. We're running in a revolution, revolution, revolution. standing up and we're kneeling down and we're digging in and we're reaching out and we're loving more and we're holding less, and we won't back down from this holy mess. And we're choosing hope and we're choosing peace. We've been chosen by grace to be flesh and feet, to the loving more, to the holding rest. And we won't back down, 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 and we won't back. We're part of the resistance. We're running in a revolution. We're part of the insistence that we are more than institution. We're part of the tradition, the Holy Spirit evolution. We're part of the resistance. We're running in a revolution, a revolution.
Are you ready to join me on this journey, this revolution? I feel like as we move forward that we're going to meet a lot of resistance, but I also believe that we're part of a resistance where we get to step forward and together we get to say yes to whatever God has called us to, not backing down from anything that we're faced with. The creator of Kid President we watched last week, the video we watched, Brad Montague, has a statement that I want to close with today. He says, "Dare to dream, but please also do. For dreamers are many, but doers are few." And I'm calling you to be a doer, that we step up together, we take action to change our world. Would you pray with me? God, this morning I pray as we think about what lies ahead, that each one of us would take to heart that there's changes that need to happen in our lives first. If we can work on ourselves and work to change ourselves, little steps, little at a time. And then we would mount up the courage it takes as we harness the hope from what you've given us through Easter Sunday as we celebrated last week, and knowing that we have a relationship with you, knowing that you will see us through, that we would be salt and light to the people in our lives, even this week, that we would take action, even if it's small steps at first, even if we're intimidated, we're embarrassed, we're fearful. Maybe we would step out in spite of that with courage that only you can give us to take on the tasks that lie ahead so that we can together, one person at a time, starting with ourselves, change the world. God, we thank you for this. In your name we pray. Amen.